Yeah, I would like to, because this is a session on supervised and supervised learning. But maybe next session, the unsupervised classification will be held by my friend from RV College of Engineering. But anyhow, I'll just quickly give you just gentle introduction to supervised learning and supervised learning. Then I will take some other concepts which are not included officially in the FDP, but these are very interesting and very contemporary, which will be useful to you. Yeah, so these are, I named it as a advanced concept in classification. This is actually outline of my presentation. I would like to, I would like to, I would like to uh, basically give introduction to supervised and unsupervised learning. Then I'll take up semi-supervised learning, multi-class classification, active learning, transfer learning, reinforced learning. If time permits, I'll just also give you the ANNs. Maybe this will be covered as a part of deep learning before deep learning ANNs. So I'm not be able to cover. Yeah, yeah. This is how I semi-supervised class. Before take up semi-supervised classification, just I would like to have a quick idea about. I'd like to give a quick idea about supervised learning. So, what is supervised learning? So, in the supervised learning, basically, we have the training data. In the sense, let us say we have there is a supervisor. Idea here is that there is a supervisor. Supervisor in the sense we have a data tuples. Data tuples in the sense, if you take an example of let us say a student information, like a student one, let us say related to placement, they have placed in a company, that is basically called as a category. Another student not placed in a company. So here placed in a company or not placed in a company, basically it is called as a class label or a category of that particular object. In this case, object is a student. How we represent a student? Student can be represented maybe in the form of US, that is a roll number, and marks obtained in various courses, and the skills in various domains like arithmetic or maybe reasoning and so on. So this is how we represent a student. And what is the class label here? So whether he placed or not placed, that is another attribute or a feature of the student, okay, which we need to basically identify, okay, which we need to identify. But in the supervised learning, what happens is we assume that a lot of data already available, like we have list of students we have already placed or not placed, that information is already available to us. So that is called basically training data. Using this training data, we are going to build a machine learning model. That means we are training the machine, okay, training the machine with this historical data, okay, this historical data. Then it is something like where a teacher trains a student, list of the set of students using some knowledge, isn't it? So similarly here, machine is trained using the training data or already labeled data. Okay, so this is basically idea behind supervised learning. Once the machine is learned or a machine learning model is built, then what happens? Now a new data, a new student information is given to you. That means for which we don't know the class label information. Mean to say, okay, let us say a pre-final year student, we don't know whether he is going to get placed or not placed because it is yet to happen, right? So such students information will be given to this trained model. Then that trained model will tell us, okay, in advance whether this student is going to be placed or not placed. So that is basically idea behind the semi-supervised supervised classification. Likewise, we can come out with many examples in nature. Okay, let us say we would like to let us other examples include in the supervised classification. Let us say we'd like to know what could be the attendance of participants today. Let us say in the FDP, in the current FDP, would like to predict. Yesterday itself, we would like to predict. Okay, would like to have an idea about, okay, what could be the attendance of the participants in the FDP next day. So that can be predicted. Okay, that can be predicted in advance using the supervised learning approaches. Okay, yes. Similarly, what is unsupervised learning? Here in unsupervised learning, we don't provide any label data. That is very, very clear. That means to say, student information. So we have student information, but we don't know whether they have placed or not placed. So we don't have such data. So in that case, that is called unsupervised classes. That means here we don't have label data. In the first case, we have label data or classified data. That is called training data. But in this case, we don't have training data, right? So we have unlabeled data, and we'll just have a lot of unsupervised learning algorithms, okay? Like one of the very popular one is K-means algorithm or K-medoids algorithm, okay? We have a lot of other networks, even neural networks also. We have some of the neural networks, they are unsupervised in nature. And also clustering approaches, particularly all the clustering approaches comes under this unsupervised learning, okay? Yeah, maybe DB scan or grid-based methods. Likewise, there are many unsupervised learning. These will be discussed in detail by another expert in the next session, okay? Just I would like to give you, it is how it happens. So you are given the objects or the objects or tuples which are not labeled. We don't know which category they belong to. Now what we say, the machine learning model, what it does is, it is going to it is going to create groups of these objects. And each group can be given a label, okay? Because we don't know label of each object in advance, right? In advance, we don't know. So that's why this unsupervised learning will come to our rescue. It basically makes the given objects into the various categories or groups. So in fact, this unsupervised learning method can become a pre-processing technique for supervised learning in case where we don't have label data, okay? Likewise, this unsupervised learning try to give the groups or clusters to us, okay? This clusters, what is a cluster? This cluster, basically the objects in a cluster are known to be similar to each other, and any two objects which belong to two different clusters will be treated as, okay, dissimilar in nature, okay? That is the property of these clusters, okay? So one of the very popular approaches, K-means algorithm. Basic idea of the K-means algorithm is, initially you have unlabeled objects. Each object, let us say M objects are there. Then we'll pick some few objects as, that's K. K is equal to a parameter which we need to supply, which indicates the number of clusters ultimately we get. So K, let us say 3 clusters we want to form. K is equal to 3. Then what happens is three objects randomly will pick up, and those we call it as actually means or representatives of the clusters. Then other objects are compared with these 3, and other objects will be put into the group represented by each of these 3 representatives based on their distance. Likewise, we'll form the 3 groups. Then we compute mean for each of these 3 groups. Again, repeat this process until there are hardly any change in the these representatives. So this is a quick idea of the unsupervised learning, okay? Yeah, there are many examples we can quote for this. Let us say we have video surveillance, maybe at airports or maybe the trains, there is railway stations and so on. We have a lot of surveillance cameras. We have a lot of feeds, right? These feeds may be at different frames. Maybe we can, different time windows, we can take some images or videos, okay? And these can be categorized into suspicious or non-suspicious, isn't it? So suspicious, if they are suspicious, that means there's some suspicious activity is detected, then probably those can be such kind of group of images or videos can be probably sent to the police department, special investigating department, for further investigation. So likewise, that is one example. Likewise, many examples, maybe if we take our academic data, student data, let's say we would like to send the students to various activities, like for let us say sports, maybe in the sports again, the football or maybe other kind of thing, maybe indoor games and so on. Would like to send it to other college fests to participate in various competitions. Then maybe we can group the students and each groups to then observe the group. Some group may be more they are similar in terms of extracurricular activity. Other group may be similar in terms of co-curricular activities, and so on. Likewise, these groups help us to identify a pattern, general pattern, and that can be used for sending students for the competitions in various colleges, other colleges. Likewise, we can think of many cases in this unsupervised learning. So this is just a quick introduction to supervised and unsupervised learning, and I will take up the other very interesting topics like semi-supervised classification. Okay, so what is the difference between supervised and unsupervised? Just now we understood. Supervised, basically, supervised learning makes use of the labeled data, whereas unsupervised learning, they don't have labeled information. Labeled data is not available. We assume that labeled data is not available. So which we need to identify through our various approaches. Okay. Yes. Like it is something like supervised. I will give one more simple example where the student has a problem one and the solution, corresponding solution is available. Okay. Whereas in unsupervised case, we have only problems with the students have problems, lot of problems like solution, like mathematical problems, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on, but they don't have solutions. Okay. So that is another analogy we can think of. Yeah. Then what is semi-supervised learning? I think by this time you might have guessed it. If somebody has, I'll give a 30 seconds pause. If you can think for a while, you can tell me, having understood supervised and unsupervised learning, can you guess what could be the semi-supervised learning?
Maybe partial information is available.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I have listed it here. Yeah.
Sir,
Partial
it is the
information.
combination of supervised and unsupervised learning.
True, true. Very, very much true. Yeah, that is the right answer. More appropriately, we can say we use both labeled and unlabeled data to build a classifier. In the supervised learning, we build a classifier using only labeled data. In unsupervised learning, we build a machine learning model using only unlabeled data. But in semi-supervised learning, we use both. When will it be appropriate? Okay, let us say we have both. Then why can't we apply any one of these supervised or unsupervised? But like, there are many cases where there are few labeled data available and more unlabeled data is available. Okay, when you have few labeled data, then supervised learning is not appropriate. It is not accurate actually, because it is something like this. A student is trained with very few cases, few problems, and very limited in material. Okay. Then what happens? That student might have not learned that concept properly because we are not given enough information to them, or we are not solved enough problems in that in that area. So he has not learned properly. Okay. So that is called where few labeled data is available. Where unlabeled data, there are more unsolved cases. Okay, student has only the mathematical problems, there are no solutions available. So in that case, what happens is semi-supervised learning will come to our rescue. Okay. Yeah, there are some cases where you can think of more labeled data from varied applications. There are many such applications, in fact. If you look at large unlabeled documents available on the web, if you look at browsing the web, you have a lot of unlabeled documents. So you might have wondering what could be the labeling document. Let us say, if you take the scientific literature, maybe each document can be labeled as into various categories. Let us say it belongs to computer science, it belongs to electronics, it belongs to electrical, and so on. Isn't it? We can label it. Or if it is only computer science related, again you have in computer science you have a lot of categories in it. Lot of labels you can attach to each document. So likewise, lot of unlabeled data available on the web. Similarly, another example is large number of images obtained from surveillance camera. I told you earlier while explaining unsupervised learning. So here also we have a lot of surveillance camera. It simply takes feeds. That's all. It's a lot of image available where we don't know whether it is a suspicious or non-suspicious. Speech collected from a radio broadcast. So radio broadcast is coming in. A speech, if you take every 30-second speech, So this speech is related to a specific topic. Maybe it could be a business, or it could be scientifically talk, or it could be something else, political related, and so on. So we don't know about it. So it is all unlabeled data. Photos clicked in a rally. We don't know these photos. How do we can categorize these photos? But they are unlabeled. Likewise, we can think of, in fact, we can think of few more such scenarios where large amount of unlabeled data is available. You can think of, due to paucity of time, I'm unable to give time for these activities, but you can think of such where there are a lot of unlabeled data is available, very few labeled data is available. Okay, yeah, in such situations we can go for semi-supervised classification. I'll take one case of semi-supervised classification. Maybe, yeah. Ma'am, may know till what time this session will go?
Sir, the session was till 11:45.
Okay, okay.
So no problem. We can extend another half an hour till 12:15, sir, because we started this late.
Because the session will start at 11:45, right?
Yeah, it was supposed to start at 11:45. Now, since
okay.
yours started at
Yeah,
10:50, I think.
Yes,
You
madam.
can extend till
I'll try my best to try to finish within time. If not possible, I'll take other 10-15 minutes. Maybe.
Yeah, no problem. Till 12 you can take, sir. No problem.
Yeah. Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, semi-supervised classification. Basically, if you look at the right-hand side portion, we are using this pictorial representation. The label data, you have label data also. Then using label data, we'll train the model. Then we got some machine learning model. There's a box representative model. Then we have, I said, it semi-supervising uses both label data and unlabeled data. So we using label data, we can train the model. Okay, that is supervised case, right? Next, unlabeled data. Yeah, I have unlabeled data. So use this unlabeled data because for which we don't have labels right now. So, but I have a model now with built using label data. So use that model to classify this unlabeled data. That's what. Use the trained model to predict labels for the unlabeled data. That is the second step. Then you have pseudo labeled data. Now, earlier it was unlabeled data. Now it has become labeled data. That we, for just distinguish purpose, for clarity purpose, then we say it is pseudo labeled. Now you have pseudo labeled data put together, then retrain the model. Okay, retrain the model. Then this model will be known to be more accurate than the original model, which was trained using only label data. Okay. Yeah. So this approach just basically called one of the approaches under semi-supervised classification is self-training. So build a the one just now explained is called self-training. Build a classifier using the label data. Use it to label the unlabeled data, and those with the most confident label prediction are added to the set of label data. That's the second step in the right-hand side part. Repeat the above process. See, this is not one-time process. We'll keep on repeating it. It is because the unlabeled data is large. Okay, we keep on adding the unlabeled data, convert the unlabeled data into labeled data. Okay, over a period of time, we get enough labeled data. Okay, then we'll build the final classifier using that label data. So this is how it goes. Initially, you have small amount of label data. Later on, maybe when we stop this self-training process, we'll get lot of, in fact, label data. Right. So this is the iterative process. Basically, this is iterative process. I think hope you got some idea about this. Yeah, I'll just give you analogy. I think this already I given. You can try to make it. Student understand the concepts using a few solved problems. Here, solved problems we call it as actually label data here. Okay, problem and solution we have. Okay, assume that there are only few cases. He knows only a few solved examples. Then what happens? Using this knowledge gained, the student try to solve few more problems. Okay, and improve his learning, and these problems become now solved cases. So this will be added to the solved problems, list of solved problems. Now he has more solved problems. Again, using this knowledge, he'll try to solve few more unsolved problems, and so on. This process iterates. Maybe over a period of time, the student will become more confident. This is one analogy which will be useful to understand this self-training. Yeah. Semi-supervised. Another one is called co-training. Basically, I'll give you just a quick idea about it, and then I'll go to the next topic. Co-training. This is a co-training. Use 2 or more classifiers to teach each other. This is also very predominantly used in our day-to-day case. Like two students. Here C1, classifier 1, classifier 2. Those are two models which are built on independent set of features. Independent set of features in the sense, let us say each student represented by the scores in 4 tests. Let us say student 1 is let us say 4 tests in the sense test 1, test 2, test 3, test 4. So each student has some scores in each of these 4. Then first classifier is built based on only first 2 scores. Another classifier is built based on the second setup, that is third and fourth test scores. Okay, so this is the idea behind. That is what the first bullet point means. Each learner uses mutually independent set of features of each tuple to train a good classifier, say C1. Similarly, another classifier also. Okay, it is analogy here is, let us say we have 2 different set of students where a student 1 knows some set of problems. He understood thoroughly. Other student has understood other set of problems. Then they teach each other. That is the concept here. Okay, they teach each other and they improve their learning. Yes, this is same thing I have given an example. You can just have a quick glance. Okay. And maybe I want you to just try to attempt this. This is a very simple quiz actually. You can try to attempt this. Assume that 2 students are preparing for GATE exam. Each one knows few problems. Explain if co-training can be useful to them in this context. This is one. Other one is, which is relevant with respect to semi-supervised classification. Makes use of more labeled data and less unlabeled data. Makes use of less unlabeled data and more unlabeled data. Makes use of only labeled data and makes use of only unlabeled data. I think you must have, these are very simple. Just to quickly review. Yeah, maybe any of you would like to respond, please respond. Or you can put it in chat box. Let me check the chart window. Yeah, yes. Yeah, the second one, somebody say yes, good. Yeah, very good. I could see some responses. Really happy to see the responses. Thank you. Yeah. Yes, next let us move on. Yeah. Yes, first one is yes. Co-training is very much useful. I just already explained to you. So this is how we are using in day-to-day life. In fact, our students make use of this. Yeah. The second one is it makes use of the second question again. Second option is correct. Makes use of less labeled data and more unlabeled data. Yeah. And now other interesting one is multi-class classification. In fact, why this is required. Multi-class classification is very much required in cases where we have only binary classifiers. What do you mean by binary classifiers? You see, there are many models where make use of one of the very popular model is, let us say, you have a logistic regression. It only generally it is applicable for only cases where you have yes/no category. That is, a student is going to get placed or not, yes or no. The tumor is present or not, yes or no, something like that. Okay. So this is how the student is going to attend or not going to attend. Likewise, only binary classification. Okay. So we are assuming, and another support vector machine also, we can take a binary classifier. Of course, it can be also used for multi-class classification. So assumption here is you have built already, you have set of binary classifiers with you, where they can only say yes or no kind of thing. But in real world, we have many class categories. Okay, we need to classify the data into many categories. Let us say the performance, prediction of the performance of a student. We can say it is poor, satisfactory, good, very good, excellent, outstanding. So there are many classes here, almost 5 to 6 classes are there. But we have only binary classifiers. How can you use these binary classifiers to address this multi-class classification? That is the topic of this. So one of the methods is one versus all, learn a classifier one at a time. So this is one thing. Given m classes, m is more than 2 here, train m classifiers, one for each class. That is the idea behind this. And you have m classes, so m classifiers are there. So let us say, how do you build a classifier, any classifier? Let us say classifier J. Because these classifiers are binary classifiers, but we have data related to multiple classes. So now we'll treat the tuples in class J as positive classes, like S class, and all others, that means all other tuples or objects related to other classes, we call them as negative. So likewise, we'll mark it and we'll train the classifier J. I think you must have got it, because all these classifiers are binary. That's why we are trying to mark it, the given multi-class data into either positive class or negative class based on this idea. So to classify tuple X, the set of classifiers vote as an ensemble. Ensemble is nothing but a group of classifiers. Okay, I'll come to it in assembly learning little later. That is also very interesting one. In fact, we use quite a lot in our day-to-day learning. To classify tuple X, we'll what is the classification tuple X? For this X, we don't know the class label, unknown data. So that need to be classified, for which we use these M classifiers, and we'll take classify the unknown tuple X to the class with the maximum vote. That's all. If you look at this, let us take an example to understand better. We have considered 6 binary classifiers related to 6 classes. An instance P is classified because that is unknown tuple P here. Assume that it is classified separately using these 6 classifiers, and the decision is obtained as shown in table. We have built the 6 classes are there, and we build 6 classifiers. Let us not worry which classifier we are building it. It could be any classifier. It could be a base classifier, or it could be a decision tree, and so on. But basically, we take only binary classifiers here. That's what in the table I have given. Binary classifier 1 for class 1, 2 for class, and so on. There are 6 binary classifiers, and I have given this P as input to each of them. They say whether positive class or negative class. That is the decision in the right hand side column. Okay, positive, negative, 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 and so on. Now, using this information, finally I need to give a decision as which class P belongs to, because there are 6 classes, right? Class 1, class 2, class 3, class 4, class 5, class 6. So now P belongs to which class? But here only positive, negative is given. Okay. I'll just take it. Now you see first one, if you look at here, I'll just see for each classifier I have a column here. Let us say you take in the left hand side part, take the first row. This classifier gives positive class. Okay, there's a decision for P, it gives as a positive class. So here in this case, first column you put 1. If it is a positive class given by a classifier, under that column and that respective column put 1. For rest of the column, don't put anything, that is treated as 0. That means they got 0 votes. This classifier got 1 vote. Similarly, if you look at negative class, second classifier classified the P as negative class. Now, you look at here, this is a classifier 2. So under this classifier, you see under this classifier, you just see second row. If you look at the second row, second column, you see under this. So now if it is a negative class, it gets 0 votes. It gets the 0 votes. That is the idea here. So rest of the classifiers, if you see the same row, if you look at here, in the same row, if you look at here, other classifiers got 1 vote. Okay, so if any classifier gets has a negative class, its prediction is negative, then it gets only 0. Rest of them will get 1. If it is positive, that classifier get 1, rest of them get 0. Likewise, if you look at third row, that is binary classifier 3, that is you got negative class. So here under classifier 3, the third column, you got 0 here, and rest of them got 1s here. Likewise, you can just try to do the same thing for other classifiers also. Okay, and yeah, once it is done, now that means total it. Each column is total here. Now first classifier, it got 5 votes. Second classifier got 3. Third classifier 3. Fourth classifier 5, and so on 3. Now you just see which one got the maximum vote. That's all. There's a 5 here. One of them is picked. That depends on the how it is programmed. That's all. One of them is whether it belongs to class 1 or class 4. That's how we are going to categorize the P given unknown label and unlabeled data. That is P is labeled as either classifier 1 or classifier 4. That's class 1 or class 4. I think hope you got it right. Now if I change it, let us say if I change it, the binary classifiers, that is if you left hand table in this negative class, I'll change it to positive class. Can you guess what could be the final class label? If I change, let us say this binary classifier 6 for class 6, right now it is negative class. If I change it to positive class, can you guess what could be the change? Any change? Yeah, let me check the window. Yeah, short window. Yeah, if anybody has any idea, can you just do response? Either still it validates class 1 and class 4. So somebody, I think Samrat said it is class 4. Any other responses? Yeah. You see, if this will become 1, right? This will become 1, rest all become zeros. Then there are many, not only class 4, in fact, zeros, yeah, others will become zeros. Even class 1 also will come. Even class 4 also possible. Even class 6 also possible. All will get vote of 4. So I think almost 3 will come here. Not only just class 4, it could be any of them. Okay, you can just try out, no issue. Yeah, let us continue. This is one multi-class classification techniques. Next, other one is also there. There is method 2. Earlier one is called one versus all. This is called all versus all. So learn a classifier for every pair of classes. Earlier we have built a classifier for each classifier, but here now we are going to build a classifier for every pair of classes. Okay, because these classifiers are binary. Yeah. So given m classes, you will get m into m minus 1 by 2 binary classifiers. That is, if there are 3 classes are there, 3 into 2 by 2, that is 3 binary classifiers we need to build. But in the earlier case, if there are 3 classes are there, 3 we need to build. If there are 4 are there, 4 classifiers need to build. But in this case, if it is 4 into 3 by 2, we are going to build 6 classifiers. So we need to build more classifiers in this all versus all case. But it has definite advantage over the previous one. Yeah, here a classifier is trained using tuples of the 2 classes. Okay, we have that means every classifier, let us say class 1, class 2 will take it, build one classifier. Then class 1, class 3, build another classifier. We'll take the data related to class 1 and class 4, build the classifier. Likewise, for every pair of classes, we are going to build a classifier in this case. Yeah, how to classify a tuple? The idea is almost same, more or less same as the previous one. To classify a tuple X, each classifier votes and X is assigned to the class with the maximal vote. That's all. The idea is same. And now let us see. Yeah, I want you to guess actually. I want you to guess the final decision. Okay, just read out please. You can guess it very easily. This is pretty straightforward compared to the previous one. Consider 4 classes. An instance P is classified using these classifiers to distinguish a pair of classes as shown below. Since here 4 classes is taken, you will get total classifiers 4 into 3 by 2. We'll get 6 classifiers. That's what I have listed in the table, left hand, the first column of the table. Okay. Then apply all versus all multi-class classification to classify the instance P. Okay. So now the decision by each classifier is shown at the right hand side part. Now can you tell me, can you guess what could be the final output? P belongs to which class among class 1 to class 4? Think for a while, it's pretty straightforward. I'll show previous slide also. Just can you, if you just see the last point, you can easily make out the answer. Yeah. Any response, please?
Yes, sir. One person has responded with class 4.
Oh, okay, one is class 4. Okay. Yeah, class 4. Yeah, that is straight. That is correct. Absolutely correct. Because decision is, if you look at here, each class will vote it. Let us say CL1, how many votes are there? Only 1. CL2, only 1. CL3, only 1. Then CL4 got 3. Okay. So now it is something like we'll ask opinion about something. Let us say how effective the FDP is. Okay, I'll ask, let us say 10 students. 10 students give different votes, right? Yes, somebody say, let us say there are out of 10, there are 7 yeses, 3 no's. Then we say, oh, this FDP is effective. So that's how we conclude, majority vote. Similarly here also. Yes, next let us go to the next one. Under multi-class classification, third technique is error correcting code actually. Error correcting code for multi-class classification. Yeah. Yes, this is basically, I think EC, I think most of you are from EC background. This error correcting codes using Hamming distance is quite familiar to you. Yeah, you can easily, this also can be applied to multi-class classification. Originally designed to correct errors during data transmission for communication tasks. For each class here, a code word is associated or generated. Next, for each bit, there is a binary classifier. In this case, 7 classifiers because there are 7 bits out there. Hamming distance, the number of different bits between 2 code words is called Hamming distance. So if you look at the right-hand side, we have 4 classes. And for each class, we have a error correcting code word is generated. Let us not discuss how these code words are designed. That is not our objective here. Our objective is just using the error correcting code word, how to perform, how to carry out multi-class classification. So for each, now you have 7 bits. In each code word, you have 7 bits. So then we need to assume that there are 7 classifiers. We need to have 7 classifiers. For each bit, we need to have a classifier because it's a binary classifier, right? So it outputs, because ultimately we need to predict these bits for unknown tuple, which need to be classified ultimately. Yeah, let us take the same example, more concrete example. Yeah, 7-bit code word associated with classes 4. That's what in the right-hand table we have. And now let us see how these code words can be used for multi-class classification. Yeah, given an unknown tuple X, the 7 trained, assume that there are 7 trained classifiers, binary classifiers already available. And we give this X to these 7 trained classifiers. They output, each one is a binary, each trained classifier outputs either 0 or 1. So in that way, we get a code word as output, that is 0. First classifier, let us say predicted class label of X as 0. Second classifier predicted as 0, third 0, and so on. So now you have got the code word for unknown tuple, which is need to be classified. Now this this code word is used to compute the Hamming distance to each of these classes. That is a Hamming distance of X, that is unknown tuple, and the class 1 code word. So what is the Hamming distance class X and class 1? Class 1 is class 1 code word is given on the right hand side table. That is the first row. Now that Hamming distance is 5. You can easily count. There are 5 different bits. Okay, there are different bits as compared to that is in comparison to X and C1. Similarly, X comma C2 you can make out Hamming distance 3, X comma C3 3, X comma C4 1. Now you just see which is the minimum. Which is the minimum Hamming distance, that is 1 here. So X is belong to class 4. That's all. That is as simple as that. So that is how we need to make it. Can you please quickly classify the following outputs given by 7 classifiers? Assume that these are the unknown tuples. I have given here 3. At least for 1, if you can perform, that's good. It will be more clear. Yeah. Take a few seconds. 0 0 1 0 1 0 1 and 6 zeros followed by 1 and so on. I take few seconds and try to compute the class label for each of these unknown tuples. That is the activity. I hope you must have computed. Yeah, it is pretty straightforward. I will not discuss anymore. Yeah, let us continue the next one. Yeah, before we go to the next topic, this is a quick review quiz, very simple one. Please try to answer this. 1 versus all method uses m/2 binary classifiers, where m is the number of classes. Second one is all versus all method uses m into m-1/2 binary classifiers. Hamming distance based method classifies a tuple to a class with maximum Hamming distance. I hope you must have answered it. If you have answered it, can you just give your response? Okay. Okay. I'm not sure whether any responses came in.
Sir,
Yes, ma'am.
yeah, question number 2, we have the answer yes.
Yeah, that is true. Yes, correct.
Question number 1, yes.
Actually, 1 versus all method uses only m binary classifiers, not m/2. It is m. No, actually. First one is no.
Okay.
Second one is yes. Third one is no.
Third one, no.
Yeah, it uses a least. There is a minimum Hamming distance. Okay, so there is no. There is one quick review. Yeah, then let us continue. Next one. Yeah, active learning. Other one is active learning. Yeah, this is also very quite interesting approach to machine learning. Here also we have both labeled data and unlabeled data. Like in case of semi-supervised learning. Okay. So labeled training data, using labeled training data, of course, training data means we generally treat it as it is labeled. Okay, just they made it more explicit in this diagram. So trained data, it has labels. So using which we build a model. That is, learn a model means that we are building a model, machine learning model. It could be any model like decision trees or SVMs and so on, support vector machines and so on. Yeah, once we have model, but its performance may not be accurate. That means may not be acceptable. Maybe it's performing very poorly. Maybe only its accuracy is 80% or 70%, even less. Of course, for an application, for the application under consideration, it may not be enough because we have few labeled data here. But we have again large unlabeled data is available. But who is going to label this? Here in this case, we take Oracle. Example is a human expert, human expert. And we'll pick, we cannot, because human expert cannot have luxury of taking all these unlabeled data and label them. Okay, that's why we need to select only few unlabeled data which are very useful to build a good machine learning model. I'll give an analogy. Let us say we have some brain tumor data is there, brain tumor data. That is let us say patient 1, brain tumor, yes or no. Like brain tumor is yes or brain tumor no. Such kind of data is limited for us. So if you use a machine learning model using such limited label data, that may not be accurate in prediction. So, but we know that a lot of unlabeled pool is there. That means for many patients, we don't know. There are a lot many patients. We don't know whether they have a tumor is present or not. Maybe MRI scan, we have done it. MRI scanning images are there, but we don't know whether tumor is present or not. So then we'll take some. That's why there is a challenge here is selecting the appropriate unlabeled data, which is need to be presented to some expert doctor. That expert doctor will see this MRI scan and they'll say, oh, yes, tumor is present. Then it will become labeled data. But here the limitation is that this expert may not have time to see too many unlabeled MRI scans to label them as or annotate them as whether tumor is present or not, isn't it? That's why here we need to select appropriate images and we need to make use of the expertise. That is a Oracle, that is a human expertise. Then for such cases, then those unlabeled data will become labeled. Then it will be added to the label training data pool. Then we rebuild the model until we get the desired accuracy. So that's why the meaning is active. That means someone is actively involved to label data, to label the unlabeled data, and also machine learning is accordingly built. So that is the idea behind it. Yeah, class labels are expensive to obtain because doctors may not be available. Okay, the time is very precious. That's why we need to choose here. We need to choose the unlabeled data as less as possible for labeling by a human expert. Here the goal is achieve high accuracy using a few labeled data as possible. So that is the idea here. Achieve high accuracy using as few labeled data as possible. Of course, if you have more labeled data in general, we can build more accurate model. But can we build a more accurate model using a few labeled data? So an attempt is active learning approach. Yeah. Now, can you think of just I have put an activity for you. Please, can you think for a while? What is the difference between semi-supervised and active learning? Anything in common? Please think for a while.
Sir, there is an answer called Less labeled data is common, sir. The chat box they put.
Label data.
Less labeled data is common.
Less label data. Yeah, that's good. Less label data. Yeah, less label data. Of course, here less label data and more unlabeled data. Even we can say that. That is idea. That is common to both supervised and semi-supervised and active learning. Okay, that is a common thing. But there is a difference also, because here it makes use of. It doesn't. This active learning doesn't make use of all the unlabeled data. Okay. Whereas it makes use of human expertise or some oracle, that is human annotator for labeling purpose. So it try to you make use of only a few unlabeled data for labeling by a human expert. Whereas it is generally it is altogether different scenario in case of active learning. So that is one difference we can make out. Yes. Now let us move on to another important one, which is very contemporary now, particularly in the context of deep learning. This transfer learning is very much important. Just let us move on to the transfer learning now. Yes. Just look at this traditional learning framework. You have different tasks. Those are given by different symbols here. Different tasks for us. For each task, we have a machine learning model. Maybe task could be one thing like I already predicting, let us say, weather forecasting, whether it is today is going to be rainy or sunny. That could be one task. And student performance, predicting student performance could be another task, and so on. Just to give an example for task. Likewise, if you have 3 different tasks, generally we build 3 different machine learning models in a traditional learning framework. What about transfer learning? Any guess? Transfer learning? Okay, let us see. Now see this picture, see this diagram. Now you have tasks are divided into 2, source task and target task. That means now target task in the sense this is the task for which we would like to build a model. But for some of the tasks, we already built the machine learning models. Those are called source tasks. Okay. Now, can you make out what is all about transfer learning from this diagram? Yes. So yes, if you look at this, so based on we have already learned, it is already learned for source task. We have machine learning models, so we have knowledge. So the knowledge obtained by this learning by these different machine learning models, we can try to build a new learning model for the target task. That means it need not be from the scratch, but we can also use the existing knowledge. The knowledge gained from the previous machine learning models can be used here. Whereas in the traditional learning framework, will not use that way. Okay, will not use that way. That is the basic idea. That means we are transferring some part of or most of the learning we had for the source task to the target task. That is basically the idea. We are transferring the learning or the knowledge gained from the source task. So that is the idea behind this. Now let us see. That extracts knowledge from one or more source tasks and applies the knowledge to the target task. That is transfer learning. Next, traditional learning builds a new classifier for each new task. Transfer learning builds a new classifier by applying existing knowledge learned from the source task. This is the idea. There are many applications, especially useful when data is outdated or distribution changes. Example, web document classification, email spam filtering. Because email spam filtering, let us say if you build a traditional way, if you build email spam filtering, email spam, that is, you might have observed that in your Gmail or maybe Yahoo Mail, you have a spam folder is there. Automatically, certain emails will get into that folder, okay, without your knowledge, isn't it? And also some of them, maybe some spam which is not relevant to you also might have come into the inbox, right? Then you can also mark it as spam actually. In fact, you are a human expert, you are making it as explicitly making it as a spam. From next time onwards, it will get into the spam folder. That's how learning happens there. Some kind of active learning there. Okay. Yeah, but here the transfer learning in the sense you have built, let us say, a traditional classifier for email spam filtering. Maybe after a week, you have a lot of other spams also come into picture. There is a new spam which was not which was not there in the earlier. Okay, in the maybe in the previously while building the previous classifier. So now that the earlier that is the previous classifier will become outdated because the new spam came into picture and this existing classifier is unable to classify the new spam. That's why it is appearing in your inbox. Okay. So in the transfer learning, what happens is the previous knowledge learned from the earlier classifier can be used even to classify this new spam also. Okay. Even web document classification also, there are many documents are being added every day. But if you have built the classifier earlier, that will become outdated if it is a traditional one. That's why there is a reason why this transfer learning is very useful in such cases. Now let us take some examples. There is a classification of TV reviews data by using camera reviews data. Let's say you have already, here the idea is you have already machine learning model for camera reviews. That is camera maybe in the Amazon or maybe Flipkart or maybe Indian Mart and so on. There are many e-commerce websites. Here you might have given you might have seen the reviews for cameras. There's a good, bad, poor, and so on. A lot of ratings are given. Okay, so those reviews data already you have built a machine learning model. Okay, maybe in the new review, maybe the customer, if you feed the new customer data, they need not give explicitly the reviews, but this model can predict it. Okay. But now the thing is, can we use that model for TV reviews data to predict the TV reviews for TV reviews data? Yes, that can be used. If you can use it, then maybe reviews data, because there is commonalities here, reviews data. So that can be used. That there is actually transfer learning. Classification of Telugu characters by using Kannada ML model. That is, you have a optical character recognition model or maybe a character recognition model, machine learning model for Kannada characters. And can we use it for Telugu characters? Maybe many common things are there. It is very there. Both languages are almost similar. Can we use it? If you can use it, there is a transfer learning. Now I want you to come out with some of the transfer learning examples. In fact, we use every day. We use a lot of transfer learning in our day-in-day life. We as humans, we use a lot. In fact, can you guess, please, based on a few examples I've given? Can you guess, please? I love to see in a chat box. Maybe take a minute. Take a minute or time. Yes, I'll join. I'll join another 2-3 minutes. Please. Meantime, please keep thinking. I want to see many examples.
So few participants have responded. Like
Yes. There are many such examples. I hope you might have given many. Yeah.
sir, few participants have responded, sir.
Yes, sir.
The responses are like writing of technical research and then referring it to research to next level. That's one
Okay.
response. The second one is like referring to ancient remedies for medicines.
Oh,
Third
okay.
one is
Excellent. Excellent.
anomaly detection.
Okay.
Next one is for learning different programming languages.
Oh, excellent. Learning program that is really good actually. If you learn one program language, that knowledge is useful to learn next language. Yeah,
Yes,
that's
sir.
perfectly fine, sir.
Research
Yeah.
paper algorithm for mammography to pulmonary. And the next response is like in mobile phones. The
Okay.
next one is cooking, prediction of
Oh,
stocks movement, and in games.
excellent, excellent. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
These are
Those
the
are all
few
easy.
responses we
Yeah,
got.
yeah, yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, sir. Really yeah, thrilled to see many examples. Okay. Yeah, use of mobile phones. In fact, if I know how to use one smartphone, maybe also I can also learn another smartphone using another smartphone. Maybe there are some features are different, but still I will be able to learn quickly. Similarly, teaching courses, we do that. If I can teach, let us say, a data analytic course, it will be useful for me to teach machine learning course. If I taught already, let us say, machine learning course, it will be easy for me to teach a deep learning course. Likewise, okay, that's what we are doing it actually. Understanding languages. If I understand one language, maybe if I understand Kannada language, maybe it's easy for me to understand Telugu language. Similarly, Tamil, if I know, maybe it will be slightly easier to know or understand Malayalam and so on. Sanskrit, if I know, maybe I can Hindi, other language I can easily learn. Riding a bicycle, if I know, I can ride, in fact, easily two-wheeler. Similarly, if you know two-wheeler, easily I can learn four-wheeler and so on. So likewise, in fact, we use a lot many cases, we use transfer learning. In fact, before I move to the next one, in fact, transfer learning in the deep learning context, a lot of deep learning models, in fact, nowadays, they are using this transfer learning. Mean to say, let us say I have a deep learning model for classification of Kannada characters. Maybe that model can be used with maybe training the Telugu characters maybe in the last model, maybe the last layer, maybe fully connected layer. Maybe if you take the convolutional network, maybe at the last layer only we'll train this Telugu characters. But rest of the layers, previous layers, I need not train because that weights can be used. The layers information, those are called trained already for Kannada characters, but those still can be used for building a model for these Telugu characters. Only last layer can be trained using the Telugu one, and so on. Likewise, this is very, very useful. In fact, in industry also, this transfer learning or this is also called as a pre-trained models. In fact, those such models are also called as a pre-trained models. Okay, those can be used. Yeah, reinforcement learning. Yeah, I'll skip. Maybe you can just look at this. Reinforcement learning also mostly one of the ways we learn lot many things by trial and error method. Like learning a bicycle, we do a lot of by trial and error method, right? Initially, we'll try to learn it. We'll try to pedal it, but we fall down. From that, we learn. That means somebody say, hey, this is not the way. There is a feedback given. Next, we'll try to correct it, try to improve it upon, and so on and so on. So for every action, you have penalty or reward here. Based on that, we learn. Yeah, this is basic idea about reinforced learning. A game-like situation. We also play games, a lot of games in this fashion. In fact, game theory comes under this. Okay. Yeah. Next one is application of reinforced learning, self-driving cars, industry automation, healthcare. We have a lot many applications of reinforced learning. Gaming. In fact, AlphaGo Zero was able to learn the game of Go from scratch and defeated world number 1 KZ. So likewise, we have even the lot of gaming systems models where they can beat humans. Even which one? In the chess also. Okay, chess also we have I think IBM computers, IBM machine learning models. They beat world champions. I think you might have know about it. News recommendation to users. This we get even while going to any online shopping, the e-commerce websites. News recommendations you will get it, isn't it? So it also can be taken as new. This one you can think of some applications in reinforced learning. In fact, assembly methods. I'll take another few minutes, 2 minutes or so. Because I will conclude with this assembly methods. So these assembly methods, as I already explained to you, assembly is nothing but is a group of several methods. Okay. If you look at this diagram, you have the data. We build out many classifiers, not one classifiers. We build many classifiers for the same data, like classifier 1, 2, and so on. T classifiers are there, and these classifiers are trained. Now I want to classify a new sample for which I don't know the class label. Okay, and it is given to each of these classifiers. You will get T decisions, T votes. Whichever the class gets maximum vote, the new sample will be given that class. So that's all. In fact, majority voting. This is a majority. Like we'll say now majority opinion. Take majority opinion and go ahead. So even we humans, we use it a lot. One of the examples for this is doctors particularly. So use a combination of models to increase the classifiers. Combine a series of K-learned models, M1, M2, Mk, with the aim of creating an improved model M star. Yeah, popular assembly methods are bagging, boosting, and general assembly. Yeah, these are some of the methods. Okay, boosting, in fact, not to be, it takes also weighted vote. Mean to say, bagging, it is something like you have, let us say, 3 doctors. You will consult each of the 3 doctors. First doctor say yes, yes, some, let us say, tumor is present. Second doctor say tumor is present. Third doctor say no. Then you take the majority vote. So that is yes. So tumor is present. Your decision is tumor is present. Likewise, we take second opinion, third opinion. You know, even humans also we take second opinion, third opinion about a particular disease. So that is basically the idea behind bagging. But in this bagging, we will not give weightage to each of the doctor. Only we take equal weightage. We give equal weightage to each of the doctors. But boosting gives weighted vote. Maybe doctor 1, I may give more weight. Maybe weight, let us say, out of 10, 1 to 10 weightage, I'll give, let us say, 8 weightage to doctor 1. Doctor 2, maybe 6. Doctor 3, maybe 3. Likewise, decision will be weight. Let us say, if first doctor say yes, they will get 8 votes. Second doctor, let us say no. That means 0 votes, of course. Third doctor, let's say 3. Out of that, yes, they say yes, then 3. So 8 plus 3, 11 votes. Likewise, whichever class gets the maximum vote, okay, maximum vote will be given, will be assigned with that particular class. Okay, the new tuple will be assigned with that class with the maximum votes. That is the idea behind boosting. Yeah. Okay. Analogy: diagnosis based on multiple doctors' majority vote. Okay, this is an algorithm. Yeah. Maybe it's available. You can just look at it. Just for completeness, I'm knowing it. Yeah, another bagging. There is a bootstrap aggregation. Yeah, boosting. Consult several doctors based on a combination of weighted diagnosis. Weight assigned based on the previous diagnosis accuracy by the doctor. Yeah, this is how boosting works. I will not touch upon much on this. But comparing with bagging, boosting tends to have a greater accuracy, but it also risks overfitting. Of course, overfitting the model, there is a risk also there, but generally boosting is known to be more accurate than the bagging because it considers weightage also. And also it pays more attention. More importantly, what does it is, this here, the M classifiers or K classifiers are trained iteratively, not maybe in sequence. They are one after the other. They will not be trained in parallel like bagging. Because first classifier is learned. If there are any misclassification, some let us say some data is misclassified, then that data will improve the weight, we increase the weight, because the next classifier will pay more attention to these misclassified case. Even we do as a teachers, we do this in our classroom also. Let us say a student, those students who have performed very well in the exam will not pay attention to them more. The students who have not performed well, for them will pay more attention. In test 1, oh, these students have not done well, then we'll conduct remedial classes, extra coaching. Okay, then we'll conduct test. Again, out of which maybe few students they have cleared it and some students they have not cleared it. So those two, for such students again will pay more attention. That means we are giving more weightage to such students. So that is the idea behind this boosting. AdaBoost is one of the very popular method under this boosting. Yeah, of course. With this I think I'll stop. Classification of class imbalance data. There are many other concepts also there, which are very interesting. Artificial network, I'll not take it up because that will be covered as a part of your deep learning session. Okay, maybe I'll skip at this point of time. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Okay. With this, I'll conclude my session. We covered in this session quick introduction to supervised, unsupervised classification, then semi-supervised classification we discussed, which is which uses less of unlabeled data and more of unlabeled data. Then we have used the multi-class classification, which is useful whenever binary classifiers are available, under which we discussed about one versus all and all versus all and Hamming distance based error correcting codes for multi-class classification. Then we have discussed about active learning, where it makes use of unlabeled data, labeled data and unlabeled data also, like semi-supervised learning. But here unlabeled data is given to some human expert to give labels to them. And next we discuss about transfer learning, where transfer learning makes use of the knowledge gained or learning gained from the existing machine learning models and which can be used for the new task. Okay. Next we discussed about ensemble based learning, like bagging and boosting, and there are many more approaches which makes use of multiple classifiers. They make use of ensemble of classifiers to give a decision for unknown tuple. Okay. So with this, I'll conclude my session. Thank you so much for the organizers giving an opportunity to share these few topics. Thank you so much. Have a great time and happy learning.
We are very happy, sir. Well, thank you very much for accepting the invitation at the last moment, sir. Thank you for sharing your knowledge with participants, and even participants were enjoying and they were responding to your quiz and questions. Very happy, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Vijay Kumar,
Yes, sir. It's my pleasure, sir, to be part of this FDP.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Have a great day, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Take care, sir.
Thank you, sir. And I request all the participants to stay and connected to the same link, and we'll be starting the next session in a couple of minutes. Thank you all.